but I'll just show you. Put the first one. Not really tight. Obviously the tighter you put it on, the longer it takes to break down. So if you imagine now a bait just sitting in there and doing that, and when it's cast in, if you watch that, it'll just start to break down quite quickly actually.
How long do you leave it before you really bring it back in again?
When I start, is that alright? When I start, I won't leave it in any longer than 2 minutes. So probably, yeah, well 2 or 3 minutes, and I just keep casting even if I won't get any bites, just to get some bait down on the bottom. But if you look at that now, it's starting to break down. There's all sorts of little bits and bobs in there, little particles, and you don't actually want to feed the fish, you just want to attract them and keep them in the swim, and there's loads and loads of stuff there that will keep them feeding.
Okay.
As that's breaking down, it's getting softer and softer anyway, so if the fish comes in and starts sucking, to just suck the whole lot in really. And if you've just got a single grain of sweet corn or a couple of dead red maggots or a little boilie sat in the middle, the whole lot's just going to go up into its mouth. So the important thing about it is just keep casting accurately. I just clip up so I'm casting the same distance, and obviously it never ends up dead on the same spot. You're going to end up with a big dining table for them to come and feed on. But it is important to keep casting regularly. Obviously the longer you go without getting a bite, the less and less you cast, but I'd still, on a day like today, still cast every 10 minutes, even in the 3rd or 4th hour if I've not had anything, because I did 6 fish in the last hour and you're going to have £60, because there can be 7, 8, 9, £10 in here.
Plus you'll have a bit of movement on the bottom.
Yeah, well, yeah, there'll be a bit of natural tow on the bottom.
Yeah, any fish have got prod eating.
Would there be any time when you'd actually add any particles or pellet or anything?
I might add.
Is there any time when you'd actually add anything to the mix?
Not really. If I'm fishing like that, I'll stick with it all day. But I might at some time add a few tiny little 2mm pellets or an odd dead red maggot or 2. There are times as well, if I think there's going to be like a lot of fish feeding, I might ball 6 or 7 balls in like that, sort of a similar size to my method feeder, which I'll put some dead red maggots and an odd bit of sweet corn in. So when they find that on the bottom with half a dozen dead red maggots and a grain of sweet corn, it's very similar to what I'm going to be casting out anyway. So that's basically it really. You can see when you do that how easy that breaks back down again. So,
how far can you boil that out though? You do it catapult or by hand? I mean, will it all together for a good range, or yeah, on the river I can throw it everywhere, but
yeah.
I'm not using catapults, I don't know how to go, but
Far enough good.
yeah. So what's, I don't know, 50 yards maybe, which is I think plenty far enough on somewhere like this. And that's like, honestly it is that simple, but it is just a case of getting your ground bait right, casting accurately and keep casting and keeping your fingers crossed that some fish move into where you're fishing.
So I mean you mixed that roughly 2 to 1, didn't you? I mean
basically yeah, more or less. Yeah, if you remember that.
That's a sort of simple rule that's worth going to, yeah?
If you're not sure, err on the not too much water, and then if it feels a little bit dry, you can always add a little bit more, you know, because
it'll dry out during the day anyhow.
You know, what I normally do is I'll mix it up in a bucket and then I'll put that on top and then only just put a little bit in there and maybe put my towel on top of that and just put enough for an hour's worth of fishing in there, so it never dries out too much. But you're never really sure. Each bag can vary how much water you're going to need in it, so to be quite honest, just err on the light side with the water, and it's easy to add it. You can't never take it out once you put it in. Yeah. You can always add a bit more trout pellet to it, but it never seems quite right once you've done it like that.
Presumably you can also tell your mix when you're casting if it falls off, it's too wet. If you wind it back in and there's still some on there, it's too dry.
I would probably say the other way around.
Alright.
If it's too dry it'll fly off.
Okay.
If it's too wet and too stodgy, if you wind back after 5 minutes and it's like that, it's probably a little bit too wet.
Yeah.
But if I wound that back now, that'll more or less come up as you're winding back. So what you hope is when you pick up, it just all comes off your feeder. And then when you're actually fishing, it's quite important to cast, let it hit the bottom, and just tighten up to it, and not move your feeder. Because obviously, if you move your feeder, it makes a trail and your bait's hanging over here somewhere. What you actually want is your bait to, you can imagine it breaking down in the top, just breaking off, and your bait sitting on the top, just there ready for a fish.
Is that why you prefer the flat ones? Because the only ones I've ever used are the thin ones, you know, like
I
the
must
tops
admit,
and
I
the
use a
corners.
flat one all the time.
Yeah.
I think the ones with fins on are okay for moulding it on and throwing it a long way, but if you're only chucking 40, 30, 40, 50 yards, then flat ones fine, because it will always sit like that. Well, I say always, probably 99% of the time. But with a fin one, okay, they might have a weight in the bottom, but I don't think you're ever sure that the land weight down with the bait up.